Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this presentation is titled, If It's Not Boeing, I'm Not Going. Are you sure about that? I've had a few people ask me to comment on the situation with Boeing, and to do that, I've got to talk a little bit about history and also my relationship with Boeing, which goes back quite a ways. Now, I went to work for Boeing back in the early 80s. When I was furloughed from United Airlines when the economy was going to heck in that, I initially got a job at Cessna Flight Test in Wichita, but quickly transitioned over to Boeing Flight Test. And then I also worked as lead engineer in the microwave technology group. I have some videos that talk about my electrical engineering type of work. But anyway, I had a fairly good experience with Boeing and also trips up to Boeing Seattle. Now, this is the Boeing plant in Wichita, and my office was at a couple different points down there. Boeing has a great history with this plant in Wichita. They built B-17s, B-29s. There's actually a plant that built Stearmans. It was kind of interesting to go and view that. Well, while I was there, of course, they were building fuselages for 757, 67s, and now they're doing a lot of the 737 aircraft. And as I said, I worked for Boeing during this time, and I was recalled back to United Airlines and went back and assumed my role as a very junior pilot, a second officer on the 727. Well, I was asked by some of the people in the Airline Pilots Association on the technical side, because of my background, they knew about my background basically because I'm a ham radio operator, and I talked to one of the ALPA guys during my entire furlough on ham radio, kind of kept me in touch with things, and he says, you need to get on this committee. And I go, okay. And he says, no, you need to get on this committee. So and it was a very good committee at the time. It was a national committee. Actually, it reported directly to ALPA president because they were doing this, trying to keep the third man on the 737, which was a totally lost cause. But anyway, I came on this as a second officer, and I worked several years, 85, and the chairman of the committee kept asking me, when are you going to make captain? Because at that time, nobody got to be head of a national committee unless they were a captain. And it was kind of funny to go to some of these meetings. They would give me a little name tag that said Captain Rogers before I was one, and the other guys would kind of laugh about that. I thought it was kind of funny, showed my wife. Anyway, I digress. But when I finally turned captain in 91, he was quick to hand over the committee to me. I also became involved with the International Federation of Airline Pilots in essentially the same capacity. When I first came on the committee, it was called the New Aircraft and Evaluation and Certification Committee, and I was the chairman. And then, you know how people like to change names. Now I'm the director of the Aircraft Design Development Committee. So one of the many projects there in the early 90s was the 777. And I was heavily involved in the 777. I was the ALPA designated team leader for the Working Together Committee, where they had airline pilots on the program with the 777, and I was the team leader of that for the Airline Pilots Association. Now, I'm going to talk about a little bit of the history of this committee, its rise and fall as it was, essentially. But when I first came on the committee, in the late 80s, the relationship with Boeing was at absolutely rock bottom. We nurtured that, and Boeing helped, and we got it back, and we had a very good relationship. And I was chairing a panel, aviation panel at the National Symposium of the Airline Pilots Association, and one of the members on it was a Boeing individual, and they had this airplane setting on the table there. The little nameplate down there was covered up, but at the end of it, stopped the presentation. It was over, and it was kind of a little bit of a surprise, but I was presented with this very nice airplane. And there's the little plaque on it presented to me because I was the working together team. I was on the Boeing working together team, and like I said, I chaired the national committee working together guys. So in 1995, Boeing was presented with the CER Trophy for their work on the 777. Now, this is a mini Collier Trophy, and what Boeing did, they were very gracious. We had such good relationship that there were these mini Collier trophies, if you will. The Collier Trophy is a much larger trophy, and it's got all the people on it. It goes back to like 1911, something like that, and it's just got Boeing name on it. But they were gracious enough to include us in there, and that little arrow. This is back in the days before the great iPhone cameras and stuff, and I didn't have it quite focused there, but that yellow arrow points to my name, and the other names on there were the members of my team. And Alpha National at their headquarters has this little trophy in a display case. And like I said, we had a very good relationship, worked together on a lot of programs. Alan Mullally was head of the 777 development, and he and I had a lot of engagements together, and I had lunch with him one time, and it was just an absolutely super guy. In fact, he was to me, he was a super nice guy, very enthusiastic, and I thought, this he just seems like too nice of a guy to, run something like this. And I thought, you got to be, a little more of a hard individual to run something like this effectively. And then we were at a industry convention, and a guy very inappropriately comes up to him trying to sell him something, and he just essentially cuts his legs off. It was very embarrassing for this guy, but I go, okay, he can be a hardcore individual, so that was kind of interesting. But he was a great guy, but he did something that was not a very wise thing. Now he rose up, of course, in the Boeing company. All right, by now you're all familiar with Spirit Aero Systems. Well, Boeing was having an internal technical symposium, and there was one engineer named John Hartsmith who produced a technical paper that's saying outsourcing is just not a good idea. It caused quite a stir within Boeing, and it pointed out the issues you could have of quality control and a lack of responsibility in some respects to the main company. Of course, Alan Mullally did it anyway. In 2005, he split it off. So basically, Spirit, you make the parts, and we'll just put them together here. Well, you're still responsible for the whole product, because we still see Boeing on the airplane, and people blame Boeing. They don't go and blame Spirit; they blame Boeing. And you can't get around poor quality and blame another company, and you can't get around inspections by having fewer inspections. You're not going to fool anybody on that. Okay, so we all know who this cute little guy is. He's a scapegoat. And this goes back to Leviticus, so it goes back a long ways. What you would do is you'd take 2 kid goats, and you would take all your sins and transgressions, and you would put it on the one kid goat, and you would send him out into the wilderness to fend for himself. The other kid goat, you sacrificed. Okay, so I'm not sure who got the best deal here, but okay, is that what you're setting up Spirit to be, your scapegoat? You're not going to fool anybody on that one. Okay, you're still obligated to have oversight, and supposedly, you spun the Wichita plant off, and now you can dedicate on putting the pieces together, but you still need oversight. And saying, well, this is Spirit's fault, that's not going to fly with anybody. Flying, yeah. Good term there to use. No, it's not going to fly with anybody, and you are going to have to come to task and make things right, because this is just not going to work. Now, this isn't the Boeing that anyone wants. The MAX issue was just not where this company should be, and most people, I think, realize it probably goes back to the reverse merger of McDonnell Douglas, where the bean counters came in, and the relationships not only between the company and the Airline Pilots Association, which I hear are very bad now, but also between their own test pilots. Their own test pilots were not allowed to the meetings with the engineers where they were making tweaks to the flight control system, what the engineers should have never been making. They weren't qualified to understand the issues that they could be presenting. And you don't keep the pilots in the dark. Now, back when we were involved in the 777, we were involved in flight tests. We went up, I've flown the aircraft, I've stalled it, I've done touch and goes, V1 cuts. We actually had a member of my committee who went to work for Boeing in the certification process. He had a good background in this, and I had great members on my committee, and I'm going to talk about that in another presentation, but these guys were fantastic. But we had a very good relationship, and that all apparently has gone downhill. This is not the Boeing that we want. Well, okay, we've got manufacturing issues here where you blow out a plug door. Okay, this is not the way Boeing should be. This is not the Boeing I worked for, and this is not the way Boeing needs to go forward. They need to correct this. The FAA is going to give them increased oversight, and that is very much needed. And Boeing needs to come back and be the company it what once was. So this sticker needs to regain its prominent position where people will once again say, if it's not Boeing, I'm not going. Because I'm not sure if a lot of people really feel that way right now. Airbus is doing very well in the industry, their main competitor. And I told Boeing in the past, this was back in the discussions of the 737, back when we were talking about the 300. It's like, how long are you going to stretch the string? Because Airbus had a brand new clean sheet of paper and they started over. Well, now Airbus is stretching the string too. But the certification costs for a new airplane are just extremely high, so that's why everybody tries to do the follow-on. But that's a bit of a different issue too, follow-on certification. Boeing just needs to get their act together, and that's kind of the only thing I can say. I hope that answered some people's questions about, my feelings of the Boeing company now, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.